Guys, welcome back. I'm going to go over what you're supposed to be working on today. All right, so we're going to do a little bit of reading, and you will have some questions to do on Socrative. After that, you guys will have time to work on your posters. Okay, we're going to read 3 chapters, starting with chapter 24. For 3 days, Luke agonized. Sometimes he decided he had to stop Jen, to persuade her not to go. Sometimes he decided he ought to go with her. Sometimes he was mad again and thought he should just stalk over there and demand an apology. But anything he might do required seeing Jen, and that wasn't possible. It poured every day, the rain coming down in long, dreary sheets that made Luke feel worse as he watched from the attic fence. Downstairs, he could hear Dad stomping around, muttering every now and then about the time and topsoil being lost with every raindrop. Luke felt like a prisoner. And again, obviously, the setting is kind of important here, and you should be thinking in terms of the fact that he's kind of like stuck in his house because of the rain, right? The rain doesn't allow him to leave. Thursday night he went to bed convinced he'd never been able to sleep for imagining Jen and the others in the car, getting farther and farther from him and closer to danger. But he must have dozed off because he woke to total darkness. His heart pounded. He was sweaty. Had he dreamed something? Had he heard something? A floorboard creaked. His ears roared as he tried to listen. Was that someone else's breath or just his own? Loud and scared. A beam of light swept across his face. Luke! A whisper. Luke bolted up in bed. Jen? Is that you? She switched off her flashlight. Yeah, I thought I'd kill myself coming up your stairs. Why didn't you tell me they were so narrow? She sounded like the same old Jen, not mad, not crazy. I didn't know you'd never be able to climb them, Luke said. It was insane to be talking about stairs now in the middle of the night in his room. Every word either of them spoke was dangerous. Mother was a light sleeper. But Luke was delighted not to be moving on, not to be talking about what Jen had really come to talk about. Your parents didn't lock your door, Jen said. She seemed to be stalling too. Guess I'm lucky the government outlawed pets. Didn't farmers always used to keep big guard dogs that would chomp people's heads off in one bite? Luke shrugged. Then he remembered that she couldn't see him in the dark. Jen, He wasn't sure what he was going to say until he said it. I still can't go, I'm sorry. It's something about having parents who are farmers, not lawyers, and not being a baron. It's people like you who change history. People like me, we just let things happen to us. No, you're wrong. You can make things happen. Luke sensed rather than saw Jen shaking her head. Even in the dark, he could visualize each precisely cut strand of her hair bouncing and falling back into place. I'm sorry, she continued. I didn't come here to harp at you. This is dangerous, and no one should go unwillingly. I was too hard on you the other day. I just wanted to say you've been a good friend. I'll miss you. But you'll be back, Luke said, tomorrow or the next day or after the rally. I'll be over to visit. If your rally works, I'll be walking in the front door. We can hope, Jen said softly. Her voice faded away. Goodbye, Luke. Chapter 25. Luke lay awake the rest of the night. At first light, he got up and quietly scrubbed away the mud Jen had tracked in up at the stairs. Trust her not to think about mud. He fervently hoped she thought of all the details about the rally. Luke was just finishing the last of the kitchen floor when he heard the toilet flushing upstairs. He hid the muddy rags in the trash and scrambled back to his place on the stairs just in time to meet Mother coming down. Morning, early bird, she yawned. Were you up there tonight? I thought I heard something. I had trouble sleeping, Luke said truthfully. Mother yawned again. You're up early? Feeling okay? Just hungry, Luke said. But he picked at his food. Everything he ate stuck in his throat. Obviously, he's feeling nervous, right? After the rest of his family left, he was just sneaking over and turning the radio on low. There were weather reports and commercials for soybean seed and lots of music. Come on, he muttered, keeping one eye on the side window watching for Dad. Finally, the radio voice announced the news. Someone's cattle had gotten out and caused a minor car wreck. Nobody hurt. A government spokesman predicted a poor planting season because of all the rain. Nothing about the rally. Dad came back towards the house. Luke snapped off the radio and bolted for the stairs. At lunch, Dad forgot to turn on the radio, and Luke had to remind him. The announcer promised a big story after the commercials. His sandwich gone, Dad reached over to turn the radio off. No, wait, Luke said. This might be interesting. Dad harumphed, but he waited. The announcer came back. He cleared his throat and declared that the new government statistics proved last year's alfalfa harvest had set a record for the decade. It was like that for days. Luke kept waiting, desperate to hear anything, but the few times he could get to the radio, it said nothing. Every time Dad left the house for any length of time, Luke switched on the light by the back door. his old signal to Jen. He stared so hard, willing her answering light to go on, that he thought he would go blind, but there was nothing. He took to watching her house as obsessively as he had when he first discovered her existence. There was no sign of her. The rest of her family came and went as usual. Did they look sadder? Happy? Worried? At peace? From a distance, he couldn't tell. He got so desperate, he asked his mother if she thought about going over to visit the new neighbors, to welcome them to the area. She looked at him as if he were deranged. They've been here for months. They hardly knew anyone anymore. And they're barren, she said. She laughed in a way that didn't hide her bitterness. Believe me, they don't want us visiting. What was she supposed to say? Nice to meet you. Now, tell me about the child you never talk about? After a week, Luke did feel deranged. And deranged means crazy. Every time anybody spoke to him, he jumped. Mother asked him, "Are you all right?" So many times he took to avoiding her. But he couldn't just sit in the attic waiting. He paced. He fidgeted. He chewed his fingernails. He came up with a plan. Chapter 26. Finally, a week and a half after the rally, a day dawned that was so clear and dry Luke knew Dad would be in the fields all day. Without hope, Luke turned on the light by the back door. After 5 minutes without a response, he turned it off and he quietly slipped out the door. The cool air was a jolt. For the briefest time, he paused. This was more dangerous than ever. But I have to know, he muttered fiercely, and he crept along the barn before making his dash for Jen's house. He had to rip the screen and break the pane of the Talbot's windows, which he felt bad about, but it didn't matter. If Jen was there, she could think of an excuse. If she wasn't, he'd never be back to this Talbot's house again. Once inside, he knew he had to do something about the alarm quickly. Jen had explained it to him once, told him the exact sequence of buttons to hit to disable it. He ran to the hall closet, yanked it open and the doors, and punched buttons quickly. Afraid he'd forgot the sequence if he hesitated even a second. Green, blue, yellow, green, blue, orange, red. The lights blinked out before he hit the last button and it spooked him. Was that how it had worked before? Hurry, hurry, he urged himself. The words kept replaying in his brain. Jen! He called, Jen! He went up and down the stairs, looking in every room. Jen, you don't have to hide. It's me, Luke. The house was enormous, 3 floors and a basement. He couldn't search everywhere, but if Jen was there, why would she hide? Against reason, he kept hoping she was. Jen, come on, this isn't funny. He found the bedrooms, huge, elegant rooms with beautifully carved beds and long mirrored closets. He couldn't even tell which one was Jen's. Finally, he admitted defeat, rushed down to the computer room. He hurried over to the keyboard and typed in the same sequence of letters he'd watched Jen type so many times. His fingers were clumsy and he kept messing up. Finally, he got to the chat room. Password. F-E-R-E, no. Erase F-E-E-R, no. At least he got it. F-R-E-E. The screen went blank with none of the friendly banter that had magically appeared every time he watched Jen. Had he done something wrong? Frantically, he exited and entered the chat room again, his hands still shaking. Still nothing. Timidly, using only his right index finger, he typed, "Where's Jen?" He had to hold on one hand with the other to steady his finger enough to hit the enter button. Almost instantaneously, his words vanished and reappeared at the top of the screen. He waited. Nothing. The screen stayed blank below his question, because nothing was worse than doing nothing. He typed again, "Hello, is anybody there?" Still nothing. He slammed his fist down on the computer desk so hard that it hurt. "I gotta know," he shouted. "Tell me, I can't go home until I know." He heard the door, too late to react. Suddenly, a voice boomed behind him. "Turn around slowly. I've got a gun. Who are you? Why are you here?" Okay, so now what you need to do today is you're going to have some questions on Socrative. Make sure you answer them. The code is up here, right? 2037 AEC7. Okay, as soon as you're done with Socrative, you guys can work on your poster. Remember, you need to have 2 different ones, one for Jen and one for Luke. And again, you need to make sure that you're following the information on here. Right? Again, you have the propaganda PowerPoint that goes over all these ideas. Again, you have to have 2 different types of propaganda. One image on each poster. Has to have a phrase. The text has to be a bit large enough that you can see it. And then obviously it has to be related to the story. Okay? All right, guys. See you later.